Welcome to Breaking the Line, the ECNL Podcast, a bi-weekly look at all things related to the growing elite clubs nationally, the ECNL. For more information on the ECNL, visit us at www.theecnl.com. Now, here's your host for Breaking the Line, the ECNL Podcast, former U.S. Soccer press officer and longtime soccer broadcaster, Dean Linke.
I am Dean Linke, and as the host of Breaking the Line, the ECNL Podcast, I also get to serve as executive producer and hand over the microphone to talented people like Jason Kutney, the ECNL Boys Commissioner, who has some amazing guests on this week's show.
This is Juan Martinez, Executive Director and President of DKSC.
This is Edvaldo Pedro, ECNL Director for DKSC.
And this is the U15 Boys ECNL National Championship Defeaters Kick Soccer Club team that we're talking with today, and the two leaders that really make everything work there, along with Hugh Radford and an amazing staff that they have. We'll talk all about the U15 team that won it all this year, about the early goings of DKSC, how it all came together with the Allegiance FC, and we will talk about this Allegiance Academy, a brand new school offering in their area, which has certainly prompted a lot of success for this club. So join me, Jason Kutney, the ECNL Boys Commissioner, as we talk all things DKSC on this week's ECNL Breaking the Line podcast.
And we will do just that, Jason Kutney, after we hear from the ECNL.
As the game continues to evolve in the United States, the ECNL remains the standard of excellence in youth soccer. The Elite Clubs National League has grown to include over 200 clubs and nearly 50,000 players across the country, with a robust competition platform for teams, educational resources for coaches and clubs, and unparalleled identification and development opportunities for players. Alongside its member clubs, collaborating to create a better future, the ECNL continues to raise the game every day. The ECNL is more than a league. Welcome back to Breaking the Line, the ECNL Podcast. Once again, here's Dean.
Once again, Dean Linke, delighted to turn over the keys to this week's Breaking the Line, the ECNL Podcast, to the ECNL Boys Commissioner, Jason Kutney.
And thank you, Dean. I'm certainly honored to be here today with two individuals who have done quite a bit with the Boys ECNL, and prior to that, the ECNL on the girls' side. A new member club for us, just a couple of years old here, but Defeaters Kick Soccer Club came on this year and won the U15 Boys National Championship. And we are honored to have Juan Martinez and Pedro Edvaldo here from DKSC, Juan being the Executive Director and President of the club, and Pedro, the ECNL Director. We're going to get into a lot of stuff about the backstory of DKSC, about a very unique and interesting model that they've built in that area to really kind of establish the club on the boys' side in a powerful way, and really dive into it. But it has to start with that congratulations, because winning a national championship, especially coming out of the Texas Conference, is not an easy feat. So Juan, Pedro, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having us.
So Juan, we got to jump into it. How does a small club that started with, I believe the story goes, it started with 7 girls in your backyard playing soccer. How does that club grow up in Dallas, of all markets, and become a national championship caliber club?
The key is to get a lot of like-minded people to work as a team and roaring in the same direction. You know, starting in my backyard in 2005 to coach my daughter and my niece, I knew the landscape of North Texas soccer growing up, playing in Classic League, North Texas being a hotbed. I knew I either had to coach them or pay somebody later to coach them. So I decided to coach them in my backyard as a volunteer, coach for 8 years. During that time, that 2001 team made a lot of noise, kind of like Pedro's 07s and 09s, but we didn't have any platforms back then to compete against. That landscape changed with DA being introduced on the girls' side in 2018, I believe. So we knew we had for the next generation, because the club went from 7 little girls to about 300 kids from inner city, very diverse club. So when we merged there, it was getting like-minded. Hugh Radford, the director of coaching of the girls' side Defeaters, we shared the same philosophy. So we started bringing in the boys. The boys were just as Kicks operating, and the girls were under Defeaters as ECNL. And then last year, after the third time that we've applied, we had been trying to get into ECNL Boys. We finally got in after 1 year of being an ECNL. Pedro shared the same story when I heard how he started his 07, 09s, getting a whole bunch of kids, buying pizzas, taking them to the park. I knew he shared the same passion that I did, and that's to make a difference.
You guys have made a difference in our league as well. I think, it goes without saying, but you guys were one of the most patient, as to your point there before, that it was on your third attempt to get in on the boys' side. One of the most patient, but also one of the most humble and respectful groups that I was able to work with in that process of welcoming you guys to the ECNL on the boys' side. I can share that similar view because the club that I was running previously, the Pittsburgh Riverhounds, we were turned away 3 years in a row from getting into the ECNL, and I still hold that over Christian Lavers and Doug Bracken's head all the time when I speak to them as something that I have not yet gotten over. But the one thing that really drew me to DKSC was your story, and it was that story of how you did get into the inner city, how you worked with underserved communities, how you had a huge Latino population that you were working with in the club. And to me, that resonated growing up in a mostly Hispanic area in New Jersey and seeing the efforts that all good people put forth to make sure that there was a club operating for myself and the other boys in that area and girls. But I think that's where let's draw the bridge there to how Pedro got involved, because I don't think too many people are familiar with that piece of this and how DKSC then worked with Pedro and his group to bring everyone together, really.
So, like I mentioned with Pedro, watching him from afar from his academy teams, I tell him all the time now when I see his teams play, I say, Pedro, your teams remind me of my team so much. And it was the style of play. And we met probably about 3-4 years ago in my office. And, Pedro had different goals. And at that time, we didn't know where our paths were going to cross with ECNL. But when we finally were accepted, making sure that Pedro came in and became the boys director so he could lead the boys, with Pedro sharing our same philosophy. And to me, that's one of the unique things out of our club is that any coach that wants to come work with DKSC has to share the same philosophy, and that's doing it for the right reasons.
Well, Pedro, I'll dovetail to you on this one, because when I go through and do my normal course efforts within the league, each year I look at clubs in each league outside of the ECNL to better understand and kind of extrapolate their results in other leagues to see how they're doing and how they're performing. And over the time when we were looking at DKSC and Juan and Hugh were continually kind of following up with us, I kept hearing about this Allegiance FC club in the North Texas market. And every time I looked at the North Texas U.S. youth landscape, I would always see Allegiance teams doing quite well. So, that kind of brought you into this conversation. And I knew once there was a relationship there that it was going to be something that would lock up really well. But talk us through on your side how that relationship came about with Juan and Hugh and DKSC.
We met roughly around 3-4 years ago. I know of DKSC. We've played against them multiple times, and it was always a joy. And then when Juan reached out and asked us to set up a meeting to discuss the possibility of us working together, that was something that certainly caught my attention. We met and we discussed it. It's just that at the time, the timing, I didn't feel that the timing was correct. Given the success we were experiencing with the other teams in our club, we had the possibility of working with literally every single club in our area, whether that was ECNL or MLS. And we took the meeting with every club and met multiple times with most of them. The more I got to know Juan, I realized that, I just mentioned earlier, it's far more about relationships than it is about the business side of it. The reason I coach is primarily because of the relationships with the boys. I was a player that grew up without a family in DFW, and it was thanks to many people helping me that I was able to find some success. So once I got in a position, I was able to do the same for community, for the boys that I work with. I wanted to make sure that if I was going to go and join someone, that it was going to be an environment that's about relationships, about learning and growing rather than just a business. And not to say that anyone is not cultivating that, but I felt that strongly with Juan and Hugh, reason why I wanted to go and join them rather than going a different route.
Interesting. I know in youth soccer, there's, it's quite frequent that we hear about mergers and clubs working together in partnerships. And it's also quite frequent that we hear that they fall apart, right? And one of the things that we always see is that if that relationship is not really intact and it's not a true bond, that the cultures come together and the methodology aligns, that often they're not built on a strong foundation. It seems like since on the periphery, I'm looking in and I'm trying to understand all the clubs in the ECNL. What I've experienced so far with DKSC, and especially in seeing your teams through the playoffs and making that run to the national championship with the 15s, but all your ages, is that there is a common thread throughout the entirety of the club, that everyone kind of aligns behind the same mission, the same ideology. And that's kudos to you guys and what you've built there. Pedro, let's talk a little bit more with you on your background then. You mentioned, you coming up in that Dallas-Fort Worth area. You're not from that area originally. Kind of, go through this process for us of what brought you up in club soccer, how you got involved in the game as a coach and as a mentor.
So it started as a player. I moved here to the States back in 2005. I remember I was playing at a Hobby Fields, I believe there in Garland, and I was just out there playing around for fun. And a coach from a club back then called Independiente, he showed up, invited me to train with them, and from there it all started. That was my first time actually ever putting on cleats, uniforms, and playing on grass, and it was really just for fun. Everything was going great until I think a year or two later, I came across another coach from a smaller club that called Armando Pelaez, who to me is like a father. And he's someone that helped me tremendously, guided me through the soccer landscape as a player, gave me opportunities locally and overseas, and I ended up in college. And unfortunately, things didn't go quite well in college, and I ended up just moving away from playing the game. But the fortunate side of it is that I got to start coaching a lot sooner. My goal was always to play and then coach. I wasn't planning on coaching at 21, but it happened, and it was a beautiful part of it. I got to coaching. I started coaching with, at the time it was Andromeda. I spent around, 6 months, let's say a year with Andromeda with my own nines. I decided to walk away from that because the environment was great from a business perspective, but from a personal growth, it was not quite what I was looking for. So then in May of 2016, I left our club and I started Allegiance. When we started Allegiance, it was just 5 09s that went with us from Andromeda and a few 08s that went with us. I had a name, I had an idea, but no fields, no sense of direction whatsoever. Drove around the streets of Euless and Colleyville, Grapevine, Keller for multiple days throughout the week looking for a field. Eventually, the day I graduated out of college, my friend told me about a church in Euless that had fields full of stickers and whatnot. And went out there, we met with them. They decided to give us the land, and from there, Allegiance started.
I tell you what, Juan must be an unbelievable person to work with talent, because what we've seen so far is him finding the right people to work with. I think he's certainly found that in you, with you stepping in and joining that club. Again, from my perspective, looking from the league stance, Defeaters Kicks has been locked in and really done well to kind of prove themselves to be at that top echelon of the clubs, not only in the Texas Conference, but now in the league. Kudos to you guys there. We're going to stop here and take a quick break for some words for our partners with the ECNL, and then we'll be back with Breaking the Line right after this.
Nike is a proud sponsor of ECNL Girls. Nothing can stop what we can do together to bring positive change to our communities. You can't stop sport, because #you can't stop our voices. Follow Nike on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Soccer.com is proud to partner with the ECNL to support the continued development of soccer in the U.S. at the highest levels. We've been delivering quality soccer equipment and apparel to players, fans, and coaches since 1984. Living and breathing the beautiful game ourselves, our goal at Soccer.com is to inspire you to play better, cheer louder, and have more fun. Visit Soccer.com today to check out our unmatched selection of gear, expert advice, and stories of greatness at every level of the game.
Okay, and we are back with Breaking the Line, the ECNL podcast. Just before the break, we were talking to Juan Martinez and Pedro Edvaldo from DKSC. DKSC, of course, being the club out of the Texas Conference that won the U15 Boys National Championship in the ECNL this year. Pedro was giving us a little bit of his background in the game, and now we're going to turn back to Juan just for a couple minutes here to better understand really the club. And so DKSC, for me, and for years in the youth game, I knew as a girls club. We talked about how that combining of defeaters and kicks formed this boys side. But Juan, give us a little background here on the girls side and the success that you've had in that club. Because I think one thing that's very interesting about the club is the number of girls within your club that are represented at the Mexican youth national team level. And that includes your daughter as well in the U17. So talk a little bit about that success and really what has created that pipeline for you.
Yeah, I think people like saying I'm a long-term thinker down the road. And I think with the females, I think we're just scratching the surface. The game is growing so fast, just with the record crowds. And so I think that because we serve a very diverse club. We have kids from, really a staff and kids from all over the world. Hugh, our director, is from Jamaica. We have Adam Flynn from England, Gerard Voltaire's from France. So these are our ECNL coaches. Michael Bones was here. I was born in Mexico, came here when I was 2 years old. So just coaching in my backyard created this sisters and brothers from inner city. And when we merged with the feeders with the platform, the people that we met approached us, and it was a scout after a scout. And, my daughter went to Mexico U15 national camp in 2019, her and our goalkeeper. And from there, just the relationships and us trying to open doors, because we've always say we're a player-centric club. So if we see a player that's from Canada or England or Colombia, and they have the level, if they're ECNL, RL, and they have the level for that country, we immediately pick up the phone. We don't wait to open those doors, because we feel that those opportunities could be life-changing. Plus, we love it when they come back and their nutrition is great, their mental, their mindset. We currently have a 22 graduate, Angela Barone, that's on the U20 Colombian national team, and she was pushed up to the women's. And so the women qualified for the World Cup. So when we see that she was with us here, is about to go to college, and now she's going to go to the Women's World Cup, those are the things that we constantly try to duplicate, because to me, I think we sacrifice as a club for the player. When these players get called up, the coaches, they might miss them for a game, they might miss them for playoffs, but they understand that we're here to serve those individual players, and those opportunities we can't take away. So I think that's helped us grow the relationships, because they know that we're here. We're constantly communicating with the national teams, is reports. What do you see? What's your playing style? That way we're able to prepare them when they go into that environment.
The audience of our podcast, as we've looked at the numbers since the inception of this program, has been a lot of directors of coaching, right? And so there's a lot of DOCs listening to this. I think one thing that stands out again is, and you just mentioned the word service quite a bit, but the Feeders Kicks does a lot of work in the underserved communities of Dallas-Fort Worth. Talk about that a little bit. How do you do that? Be as specific as you can, but what do you do to kind of tap into that market to support those players that maybe don't have the resources that they would otherwise need to compete in a league like the ECNL?
In our community, it's like when people say that, I guess, Latinos multiply, it's true. It's like as soon as they're born, they're 22s, 21s, 20. We already know, okay, they're going to be DKSC. And when we start them out, when they're 4 years old, 5 years old, we have, I guess, a philosophy of make it as fun as possible for them so they could fall in love, while they learn. And winning comes as a byproduct. But for Academy, we treat Academy as not really a business revenue stream. We basically provide fields for all our Academy. I always tell the select coaches, our Academy coaches are the most important coaches in our group. That's the future. So we really, really provide resources from them, from good facilities that practice. They have their own practice facilities, while select train somewhere else. We want to build a culture. That way then it becomes where these Academy teams could train and pool, because I feel in today's landscape in U.S. with different tiers, different platforms, ECNL, regional league, you have other leagues, whether it's GA or USYC or MLS. I feel that teams like Pedro staying together from 4 years old, or my team, the ones, it's very, very difficult, because all the kids develop differently, different times. They have different goals. They could be multi-sports athletes, so we encourage them to play other sports. We don't try to force them in there, but the ones that are really more competitive, we try to start grouping them together. So I think that really, really helps our culture, and really not making it about finance money. So our Academy, we usually use everything that we collect, we just use it to pay for facilities and the coaches. Most of our coaches are kind of starting out like Pedro and myself. We're players. I coach because my daughter and my niece. Pedro had a calling to serve kids and make an impact. So a lot of coaches in our academy, that's what you have, a lot of people that are passionate. And then what we do with our upper staff, our senior staff, is provide training, coaching, education for them so they could get their grassroots licenses. And, because they want to learn, but we're kind of like, when they run a session, it's kind of like for 4 or 5 years old, we don't want them to stand in line. We want them to be movement and have fun. So I think that's the difference of creating not just, if you could afford academy.
Well, I think, we'll get to the meat of this next topic, because for me, one thing that really stood out, and it was kind of a storyline that was unearthed through watching this U15 team make a run to the national championship this year. But I knew about DKSC forming the relationship with Allegiance. I knew about Pedro stepping in and having that all melded together into a successful run for the team. But I didn't know the backstory. I didn't know, and I didn't really understand why these players were so aligned on the field, where that synergy came from. I sat down and spoke to Juan when we were maybe in St. Louis at the time, Juan, or possibly San Diego. I can't remember at this point. I'm getting too old. But the discussion was more about the Allegiance Academy. And I didn't realize at that time that what Juan was talking about was an actual school. And so I was blown away. And this, I think, is a humongous story that needs to be told in this country, because when we think about academies and residency programs, oftentimes we just go immediately to the pro club, right? We assume that it's the pro club that's doing this. We don't always understand that the youth clubs that are really at the grassroots level doing such amazing work in this country, that there's one of these clubs in Dallas, Fort Worth, that has built its own nonprofit a school. It's got a school for all these players. And so Pedro's group, that U15 team that went on and won a national championship, I believe all those boys attended this school. It was a school that was founded in August 2021, called the Allegiance Academy. But I'll turn it over to you, Pedro, kind of bring us up to speed on the Allegiance Academy, the grades that it serves right now, the number of students in each class. Just help us understand, because this is truly a remarkable thing that has been accomplished and built in Dallas for the DKSC program.
And yeah, the Allegiance Academy, where do I even start? That has been a blessing for us. So the school started last year, August of 2021. We are entering, we start classes again in August 15th for our second year. So far, we are doing 6th to 10th grade for this season. And the reason for that is because we want the 07s to be the first graduating class from Allegiance Academy. So this upcoming school year, 6th to 10th grade, the following year, 6th to 11th, and then 6th to 12th. So we should have 6th to 12th whenever the 07s become seniors. And from that point on, we'll remain 6th to 12 indefinitely. The school, so far we have, for this year, actually, we don't have an exact number yet because our numbers grew significantly once we got back from the national championship. But we're anticipating anywhere between, say, 90 to 120 students for the upcoming school year, starting on August 15th from 6th to 10th grade. And luckily for us, the entire 07 team, with the exception of the 2 goalkeepers, all of those boys attend the school. They spend literally 12 hours together every single day, and that has been phenomenal for us.
So really, I mean, it was amazing to hear about this. I think still this concept of building something like that, where, you know, the bricks and mortar side of it, where you actually have all these players coming together, playing together, going to school together, eating food, you know, meals together every day. But talk to us about that. What does a typical day look like for a student at Allegiance Academy that's playing for DKSC right now?
So give an example with the 07s, their group that last year, there were 8th and 9th graders. They typically get to school at about 7 o'clock in the morning. They had training from 7:30 until 9:30. From there, they'll stretch, take a shower, go eat breakfast, and then start classes at about 10 o'clock. From 10 to 1, they'll be in a classroom, get out at 1, have lunch from 1 to 1:30, and then go back to classes again and have class until 3:45. At 3:45, they'll get out, go to the locker rooms, change, we'll give them a snack, and then head straight to the fields where we'll have practice on the outdoors. So the 07s will go and have practice from 4 to 5:30. From 5:30 to 6, they'll have an agility session, strength and agility, and then from 6 to 6:30, work on flexibility, and they're able to go home at about 6:30 every single day. Now, for the rest of the boys that are not part of the 07s, they'll have the same schedule, except from 4 to 5, they'll have a different session. So they'll have a session where they're working on the weak foot and also some agility and strength sessions.
The meals themselves, because to me, this is one thing that really stood out. I in Pittsburgh a few years back did an intercity program for schools where I went in and led a gym class program and basically worked with all students, all ages through the course of weeks. One thing that stood out to me was just the meals, the part of the urgency of getting meals to many of these students that in many cases didn't have the option to eat over the weekend like they would during a normal school week because of the meals being provided in school. These meals at Allegiance Academy are all part of this program, right? So all these students are eating meals, the breakfast, the lunch. This is part of that school program. Is that correct?
Absolutely. So we just became we just became a fully accredited school from 6th to 12th grade. And in addition, we have a private chef on staff. He's there typically from, I think, 6 in the morning up until 3:45. And the boys are able to request what they want to eat. Sometimes kids want to eat chicken. Sometimes they want to eat a steak, and they eat like they're eating in a fine restaurant. And everything is included on a one package, from the electronics to the meals to the strength and conditioning to the physical therapist, and everything is all in one. They don't have to pay for anything additional.
Jason, just to jump on here, when Pedro started this school, I didn't know what grades. So that was during the merger, and Pedro talking to different clubs, and he told me about this school. I immediately was like, this is a game changer. And to have an official school of DKSC, my daughter, between her call-ups from Mexico, is homeschool. So she's a sophomore, so she is not able to attend Pedro school because last year was freshman. And her being in and out of camps, I started taking her to the school. And the first time I went there, I was blown away. I was like, there's 2 indoor fields, the cafeteria. I even saw one time somebody doing massages, a masseuse. I was like, man, this is a real deal. And that's where all these athletes training from the morning to afternoon and getting to know each other. The biggest thing that I see the benefit is the chemistry. They're like brothers when they see it on the bench. They just spend so much time. So,
well, I having grown up with a brother 3 years older than me, I fought a lot more than I saw the boys on your team fight amongst each other on the sideline. They did fight for each other, which was good. But we'll take it to a break now. We're here breaking the line ECNL Podcast with Juan Martinez, Pedro Edvaldo from DKSC in Texas. We'll be right back after this.
The ECNL is pleased to announce Quick Goal as the official goal provider and partner for ECNL Girls and ECNL Boys, a new partnership created to support the growth and development of the country's top players, clubs, and coaches. At all national events, including national playoffs and national finals, the Quick Goal Coaches Corner will provide hospitality and social space for ECNL Girls, ECNL Boys, and collegiate coaches. Quick Goal will also be the presenting sponsor of the National Championship winning ECNL Girls and ECNL Boys Coaches of the Year and the ECNL Girls and ECNL Boys Goals of the Year. Quick Goal looks forward to helping the ECNL continue to elevate the standards of youth soccer and provide more opportunities to players on and off the field in the coming years.
ECNL Boys is partnering with Puma for the 2nd year, driving sport forward with the leading products and the next generation of pros who wear them. Puma has proven themselves as the fastest sports brand in the world, the fastest innovation, the fastest players, and the fastest products in the game. They're the perfect partner to complement the speed and talent of our teams. In keeping with their mantra of forever faster, Puma introduces the world's fastest boot, the Ultra. The only boot engineered for speed, the Ultra combines a woven upper with a lightweight outsole for direct forward motion, speed, and acceleration. It's the best in the game, designed for the best players in the game. From athletes just starting to turn heads to some of the best athletes to ever play their games, Gatorade shows that they are the proven fuel of the best. For the athletes who give everything, nothing beats Gatorade, the studied, tested, and proven fuel of the ECNL.
Okay, and we are back for our final segment here of Breaking the Line, the ECNL Podcast. We are with Juan Martinez and Pedro Edvaldo of DKSC. We started talking just before the break about the Allegiance Academy, which is a nonprofit school. It was founded in August of 2021 for grades 6 through 10. They're growing that program out now over the next few years so that the oldest age group, just so happens to be the national championship winning U15 boys group, that group will be their first graduating class from the Allegiance Academy in just a few years' time. And we started hearing a little bit more about what that day entails at the Allegiance Academy. And Juan, just before the break, touched on the fact that his daughter, who is a member of the U17 Mexican national team, is now going to have the ability to reap the rewards of having a program like that in the Dallas area. So I want to touch on that first here, Juan. On the girls' side, I know primarily when this program was formed at the Allegiance Academy, it was primarily with the boys' side. Now, this is going to be kind of reversing course in some ways, or at least opening up the opportunities for the girls. Talk to us about that, because I think that's, as you touched on earlier, with the growth of the game, what we just saw over the weekend with the European Championships and the attendance at those games and just the general fervor around the game. Talk to us about the opportunities that'll be there for the girls with respect to Allegiance Academy.
Yeah, I mean, I always say is like, I don't like advertising for anything that I don't strongly believe is quality and good. So when I saw it firsthand, I immediately started talking to some of the players that are at that level that could benefit. You know, not everybody dreams to be pro, but that reality is happening. You know, we see it with Jaden Shaw making her debut from North Texas. She played with multiple teams growing up. She actually played with all 5 boys for a year in academy just so she could get a faster pace. She did city futsal. So this school, I feel it's for that athlete. The elite athlete has dreams to play pro one day. So we're trying to get our elite athletes to join, to register. It's a big sacrifice because it's the school, and you know, giving up prom and giving up high school football games. Girls are more social creatures, but we are trying to get more girls. Currently, right now, I believe there's a couple of girls already that are in the school. Last year being the first year, only taking students to 9th grade, limited some players that were interested. But we're hoping that each year we add more and more girls, that then it becomes, this is our ECNL team training here, just like the boys.
Well, I think it's important to mention here that, as Pedro said before, they just received their accreditation for this school. I mean, when you think of this school, and you think in many cases, if you think of schools associated with soccer programs, you don't always think of what they offer here. I mean, you got the language arts, the math, the science, the social studies, history, all those, but you also have Spanish, you have Portuguese, you have computer science. They're teaching art, guitar, piano. I think you recently have it's a partnership with a local community college as well to offer dual credit classes. Pedro, if you can talk a little bit about that, because you know, Pedro, you have a big role in this school as well. You're the athletic director. You're also the head coach of the school program. But talk to us about all that goes on outside of the game of soccer with respect to Allegiance Academy.
That is something that's extremely important for us, because we have to understand that while we will allow for all of our players to go and play professionally, the reality is the vast majority will not. And we had to focus on providing them with opportunity, and that starts with college. And as we all know, college are not looking for good players that can study, they're looking for good students that can play. So then with that in mind, we make sure that our academic department is just as strong, if not stronger, than our athletic department. The reason why we started focusing on offering more advanced classes, as well as a partnership with the community college, that way our students can take classes that are at the level, and even have the possibility of earning an associate degree before they graduate high school. That way, when they get to college, they already have a lot more credits and they are ready to take on the college environment. Our academic department is extremely strong. We have a rule with our 07 team, the national championship team, where the boys know if the grades fall below an 85, they don't get to play. Well, that might mean we'll lose a game here or there. We also have to be on the same page, knowing that if we don't focus 100% in the classroom as well as on the field, we might struggle later on. So it's extremely important for us that our students are great players as well as great students.
Well, it's truly amazing. I mean, what you guys have built there, and you know, I don't say this lightly. We, as a league, from an ECNL perspective, we do our best to go and vet clubs, right, and to try to find the right clubs. We don't have the magic 8 ball, right? I don't always understand exactly what the club's going to look like a year after we accept them. And going through that process is very difficult because of the number of clubs and the number of leagues in this country. In many cases, we try to find the people that we believe have the head on the shoulders, the alignment of methodology, and all the nuts and bolts. This was one of those nuts and bolts that we didn't know about. Right? This came about after the fact that we saw your success, and now we're understanding what is really prompting that success on your end. But we also look for clubs that are going to help raise the profile of the league and help improve and enhance what we're doing. And I think you guys have certainly done that. When you look at the league and entering in on the girls' side first, Juan, and now entering on the boys' side, I guess the key question is, was it worth the wait on the boys' side?
Definitely was worth the wait. I think the first year that we applied, I submitted the application. It was like, I don't know if we're ready. I think we are. I have faith. He goes, but I don't know if we're ready. And really, if you remember after the first year, it's like, okay, there's always next year. Let's see what we need. He goes, what are the reasons? And let's start climbing that mountain to see what we need. And we added a team here and we made real big improvements with our younger teams, our academy. And that's when I started talking to Pedro. And then the third year, we were able to get in. And so to me, it's definitely worth it. I think the league does an amazing job of the exposure. So I think it's going to change the trajectory for our boys.
Pedro, how about you? I mean, you come at this from the Allegiant side of things first before merging up with DKSC and now coming into the ECNL. What's the biggest difference that you've experienced in terms of the competitive opportunities within the league for these players that you've worked with for many, many years?
When we jumped with DKSC and joined the ECNL League, I had absolutely no idea what the level was going to be like. We've played some ECNL teams here and there, and actually we had the advantage because we've been together for so long and spent so much time together. But after going through the first season, I must say that the entire team, the families, the players, and myself, we are all exceptionally happy with the league. The competition has been significantly better than we even imagined it would be. It's been a blessing, really. And I'm looking forward to year two. I'm sure we're going into the year two. We are going to be bullied all over the field because everybody wants to be the champion. I know I would if you were on the other side. So the competition has been special, and I really, really want to say thank you for the events. The events is something. I went to events that my teams weren't even playing. I just wanted to be a part of that. It was great, and I'm looking forward to it. I'm sure it's going to continue to get better. The playoffs in San Diego, the competition was great. The atmosphere was great. It was truly a special place to be.
Well, as I mentioned before, the league is built basically on the quality of the clubs that we have in the league, right? And so we're an extension of that quality. You guys have certainly got a banner year this year on the boys' side. I expect that will continue, and I'm sure that the interest level in the Allegiance Academy will grow exponentially, especially at that age group that just won a national championship. And now you have the ability to raise that one banner in the rafters of the school so that all the other age groups can look up at that every single day and wonder why they're not up there, right? So you have that motivation that you can spread through the entirety of the club. But again, from my end, if we look at something like this as a very unique story, I've been around the game my entire life. I don't come across stories like this too often. Right. And I say that genuinely. You guys have certainly built something here that's very special. It needs much more national attention to be brought to Allegiance Academy and all that you have going on, because this is truly a remarkable story for youth soccer and in general for the boys and the girls in that Dallas-Fort Worth area. But it will spread well beyond that, I'm sure. I want to thank you guys. I want to congratulate you guys as well on the year, not just the U15 National Championship team, but you've competed very, very well in a very tough conference on both the boys and the girls side and in the top league in the country. Certainly for us to have you guys on board, even though it took a few years to get you there, it was certainly well worth it on our side as well. And so I thank you, Juan. I thank you, Pedro, for your time. Pedro, for the listeners that don't know, he's actually in Portugal right now taking this call. So certainly appreciate that as well. But thank you guys so much for being part of Breaking the Line this week.
Thank you, Jason.
Thank you, Jason.
Indeed. Thank you, Jason. And thank you, Juan and Pedro. What a great story we bring to you again this week as part of Breaking the Line, the ECNL podcast. I also want to thank Andrea Wheeler and her great crew, Christian Labors, Jen Winigo, Doug Bracken, for each and every one of them and all of you, as well as our producer, Colin Thrash. I'm Dean Linke. We'll see you in 2 weeks for another edition of Breaking the Line, the ECNL podcast.
Thanks for listening to Breaking the Line, the ECNL podcast. For more information on the ECNL, visit us at www.theecnl.com. theecnl.com. And if you have a suggestion for the show or a great idea for a guest, please email us at info@theecnl.com. Breaking the Line, the ECNL Podcast is an ECNL production. ECNL, more than a league.